The following program, The Russ Belville Show, is intended for responsible adults only. We advocate to the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate any illegal activity and encourage all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers on The Russ Belville Show are their own, and The Russ Belville Show cannot be held legally responsible for their validity or reliability. Viewer discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
To bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
And I think that we need to rethink and decriminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Yeah, I hear you had a question for me.
Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
We love it.
All right, good day, tokers and tokettes, and welcome. It is Tuesday, December 4th, 2012, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Welcome to the show. We're so glad you could join us here, and you can also join us online at radicalruss.com. Get yourself into our chat room. Just type /login and create yourself an account today. Build this community and share all of this information. This is how we're going to win. This is how we're going to end prohibition. So glad you could be here today. We got all sorts of great stuff coming up on the show. Before we get too far into it, let's introduce the co-host. Sitting over here to my right, we've got Brian the Red. Hi, Brian.
Hey there, Russ. How are we doing today?
I'm doing just fine. And what's new in your world?
Oh, not much. Just got a call from Brave Michaela's dad saying a couple of their friends want some T-shirts, so we'll make sure we get them hooked up.
All right. Awesome. If you remember Brave Michaela, of course, the 7-year-old medical marijuana patient here in Portland, Oregon, who's treating chemo with cannabis. And you can learn more about that by visiting our blog at radicalruss.com. We've got an interview with her parents before they were gotten on Anderson Cooper, Dr. Phil, Dr. Oz. We had them here first. So check out the archive at radicalruss.com. You can learn more about the situation. Coming up on today's show, we've got our regular Tuesday segment on the first and third Tuesdays of the month. We go across the pond and visit with Normal UK. Our good friend Greg DeHote, aka Cannabis Cure UK, is going to tell us all about the latest news from the UK, including the royal pregnancy and how that would fit in with medical marijuana. We're going to talk a little bit about a case of a perv who's blaming his perviness on cannabis, and we've got the news of the former Home Secretary who has kind of changed her mind a little bit on cannabis. We'll ask him all about that at 1:30. For our Radical Rant today, the newest issue of High Times Magazine is out, and my article is in it. This is the February 2013 article. So we're going to talk about that. It's called Beware of the Border. I'll tell you all about why the U.S. Border Patrol are the federal drug cops, and some follow-up information from truthout.org. Before we get to all of that, of course, at 4:20, we've got our, at 20 after, it might not be 4:20 for you, but at 20 after, we got our Daily Toker Tunes, new auto-tune from Melody Sheep for today. Then, at the very beginning, right after this break, we're going to go into our 420 headline news. We got a new poll on marijuana legalization, a horror story for inmates in North Carolina, an update on DARE canceling marijuana education, and Gregory Rayburn, the Twinkie CEO, making off with the dough.
We'll be right back after these messages from our 420 friendly sponsors. Support these advertisers because their ad money goes straight to the Russ Belville Show. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. Please do not give up your precious liberties. There's nothing wrong with standing up for our constitutional rights, and in fact, it's the only way to honor the Constitution that recognizes our natural rights. Treat law enforcement with respect and respect the Constitution by standing up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, stand up for your rights by repeating, I respectfully invoke all my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak to my attorney, Omar Figueroa. Omar Figueroa has more than a decade of experience in federal and California courts and graduated from Yale University, Stanford Law School, and Trial Lawyers College. Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at www.omarfigueroa.com.
Tjena, jag heter David, PKA Dirtball. Vi ska röka hela tiden, alla år.
Jive, marry, grifo, grass, hay. Technically, it's cannabis sativa, the common name, marijuana. She has found a crutch to see her through her difficulties instead of facing up to them and coping with them. And in time, she may be ready to try something different, something better.
Gateway theory doesn't work. It's a reality.
Now it's time for our 420 headline news. I'm Russ Belville. The newest poll shows record high support for ending marijuana prohibition. This from theweedblog.com. According to a national poll conducted by Public Policy Polling from November 30th to December 2nd, a record high 58% of American voters said they think marijuana should be made legal, compared to only 39% who do not. In addition, 50% of respondents said they think marijuana will become legal under federal law within the next 10 years. A strong plurality, 47% of respondents, said they think President Obama should allow Colorado and Washington to implement the ballot measures approved by voters last month to regulate and tax marijuana like alcohol. Just 33% said they approve of President Obama using federal resources to prevent them from going into effect. In October 2011, Gallup found, for the first time, a majority, 50% of Americans, supported making marijuana legal. Election results and pre-election polls in Colorado suggest Public Policy Polling's automated telephone survey might be a more accurate gauge of support for marijuana legalization, perhaps due to a hesitancy of voters to express their pro-marijuana sentiments to live operators, such as those utilized by Gallup. Horrifying report from the rawstory.com. North Carolina inmates forced to rub habanero pepper sauce on testicles and kiss snakes. The North Carolina Department of Public Safety has asked the State Bureau of Investigation to open up an investigation after 6 inmates claimed that guards forced them to burn their genitals with hot pepper sauce, perform simulated sex acts, and kiss snakes. North Carolina Department of Public Safety spokesperson Pamela Walker told the Associated Press on Monday that one Sampson Correctional Institution staff member went on leave and another was reassigned after inmates sent a letter to the U.S. District Court in Greensboro alleging civil rights violations. These 6 inmates claimed that they had been forced to entertain correctional staff by pretending to have sex with each other while nude and performing other humiliating acts. Quote, the inmates also reported being forced to gulp a super hot, exotic hot sauce purchased off the internet and slather it on their testicles, as well as being forced to grab and kiss wild snakes while working on a road crew and throwing captured bunnies into oncoming traffic, end quote, the Associated Press reported. Inmates who cooperated said they were rewarded with better work assignments, food, alcohol, and tobacco. Both alcohol and tobacco products are prohibited in North Carolina prisons. DARE, America's most famous anti-drug program, will no longer talk to children about marijuana, according to Hit and Run blog at Reason.com. However, according to a release from DARE, quote, recent press reports regarding the DARE Keeping It Real elementary curriculum not addressing marijuana are incorrect. The subject of marijuana is attended to in the new DARE Keeping It Real elementary curriculum. The topic, however, is addressed only after it has been established to be an age-appropriate topic for the individual concerned classroom. For the general population of 5th to 6th grade students, the topic of marijuana is not age appropriate. Most students in this age group have no basis of reference to the substance. Research has found that teaching children about drugs with which they have never heard of or have no real-life understanding may stimulate their interest or curiosity about the substance. Gregory Rayburn, Hostess's acting CEO, won't participate in a company-wide pay cut. This from HuffingtonPost.com. The acting CEO of Hostess Brands, the failed Twinkies maker, will not take part in a company-wide pay cut. Though he imposed an 8% pay cut for all Hostess workers, Gregory Rayburn's monthly $125,000 pay, or $1.5 million a year, will remain unchanged, a company spokesman told the Huffington Post on Monday. The company's shutdown will cause about 18,000 people to lose their jobs. Rayburn was eligible for a bonus of between $375,000 and $1.125 million, but he decided to forego the money. Of course, the CEO of Hostess shutting down these operations over a strike by the bakery workers who had refused to take even more pay cuts and pension cuts. That's your 420 headline news for today, Tuesday, December 4th, 2012. I'm Russ Belville. When we come back, we're going to look at a report from Wired magazine on the U.S. State Department's private drug war Air Force. This is the Russ Belville Show. Stick around. We'll be right back.
I'm Sub Cool from Team Green Avenger. At TGAgenetics.com, we are working on the leading edge of medical strains. Our strains are rigorously tested for THC, CBD, THCV, and other critical cannabinoids. Know your grow. Check out our genetic diversity at TGAgenetics.com, the home of Jelly Bean, Jack the Ripper, Vortex, and other award-winning cannabis strains.
Cannabinoids and health.
Cannabinoids.
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 Why am I having trouble saying that?
Cannabinoids.
Jeez.
Cannabinoids.
What a gift.
Flame on if you can. You're looking for the dope weed. Fire it up. Flame on if you can.
Welcome back. It's time for us to go behind the headlines here. It's 13 after the hour. Amazing report here coming from Wired magazine. The U.S. ready to offer mercenaries $10 billion for a drug war Air Force. Off of Wired.com. This is really amazing. And as we go through some of the facts that are brought up in this report, keep in mind that as we talk about marijuana legalization and ending this prohibition, it is so entrenched, and there are so many industries and so many jobs and so many salaries that are dependent on this drug war. And we have to remember that as we end marijuana prohibition, we have to think forward to what jobs will these people do when they no longer have, inmates to put, hot pepper sauce on their testicles. What job were we going to get for that guy? Anyway, let me go to the report. The State Department needs a business partner to keep its fleet of drug-hunting helicopters and planes flying worldwide. Starting next month in Melbourne, Florida, the State Department will solicit some defense industry feedback on a contract to help operate its 412 aircraft based in at least 8 nations before it reopens the contract for bidding. Among the missions the diplomatic corps needs fulfilled, remember, this is State Department we're talking about, not Department of Defense, not the DEA, not, law enforcement. This is the State Department. Among the missions the diplomatic corps needs fulfilled, quote, provide pilots and operational support for drug interdiction missions such as crop spraying and the transport of personnel and cargo, end quote. Drug interdiction missions. According to a pre-solicitation, the department's Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs released on Friday. From its headquarters at Florida's Patrick Air Force Base, the State Department directs 51,000 annual hours worth of air operations. In Colombia, Bolivia, Peru, Pakistan, and Guatemala, it mostly performs counter-narcotics and law enforcement activities. And this is according to a State Department spokeswoman, Pooja Junjunwala. She also says, or the pre-solicitation also says, the total value of the services rendered here could reach $10 billion over the life of the resulting contracts. $10 billion. So you think of these private enterprises, these defense contractors, and the factories to build helicopters and the fuel to supply them for their missions. And I mean, every little piece that goes into these operations is some part of an economy that's dependent on us keeping marijuana illegal. And they are going to fight to keep that. And if not, if it becomes so overwhelming in public support for marijuana legalization that it's impossible for them to keep it, they're going to have to find something to redirect it to. We got marijuana prohibition because Harry J. Anslinger, who had a gig as a prohibition bureaucrat, lost his gig. Once prohibition ended, there was nothing for Harry Anslinger and the federal prohibition cops to do. So they got kind of transitioned into being drug cops, into fighting the drug war, Federal Bureau of Narcotics, and so forth. So what's going to happen as we eliminate marijuana prohibition, which provides the bulk of their operations, that provides the bulk of what they're going after, and you'll hear some more statistics about this in the Radical Rant coming up a little bit later, about how much this is a part of their operations. What are they going to shift that to? Where is that going to go? Got to start thinking about that. Of State Department's 412 aircraft, again, this from Wired.com, some 120 of them perform drug interdiction and transport of personnel. The other 292 are in some form of storage. So they've got 120 active helicopters and aircraft spraying coca fields in Bolivia and Colombia and Peru, and trying to run fumigation in Afghanistan, in Pakistan against opium crops. And this is not just one part of not just State Department with $10 billion contracts floating around out there for these defense contractors to come after. One of the largest pots of security contractor cash in the U.S. government, worth $3 billion, comes from an obscure Pentagon bureau called the Counter-Narco-Terrorism Program Office, which disperses cash for missions that blend counter-narcotics with counter-terrorism. So, as we wind down, and you got to also think, we're winding down not only this war on marijuana, but there's also a wind down of our actual land-based real wars with shooting and death. I mean, I guess our war has shooting and death too. It's just in Mexico. Anyway, as we wind down the wars in Afghanistan and those contractors come back, not just our soldiers that are coming back, if you start to take a look at how much private security forces and mercenary labor are used in our military excursions, those guys are going to need to come back and have a job as well. So we've really, really got to think about how ending the war on marijuana, what is the exit strategy in economic terms for ending this war? What jobs will they do? What jobs will we have for the prison guards? What jobs will we have for the rehab people? Indeed, I want to see those rehab people working for folks that have alcoholism or methamphetamine abuse or heroin addiction. But there's not enough of them to employ as many of the drug courts and the rehabs that we have in this country that are largely fed through marijuana smokers whose only problem with marijuana was getting caught with marijuana. So start thinking about how we're going to retool our economy. What will the post-legalization drug war industrial complex become? Where will that be focused on? Who will be the next scapegoats and targets? If they can't pick on the pot smokers, who are they going to go after next? And let's make sure that we create a world where they can't go after someone next, where we start to take a look beyond just the drug war and to see what it has wrought in the terms of surveillance and the terms of our eroding privacy and eroding anonymity in the internet world. As I look forward to a career after legalization, when I no longer have to fight for the right for people to use a simple and non-toxic, helpful medical herb, when that war is won, there are so many bigger wars out there that still need to be fought, and many of them that got their start through this prohibition. So start thinking of that in the post-legalization world as well.
Well now.
It's break time already.
Oh, well then.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Flame on if you can.
Flame on, flame on.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would sell you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
Hi, this is Dan Michaels. If you're looking for professional voice talent for your commercial or podcast, I'm your man. Visit danmichaelsaudio.com for more information. The Russ Belville Show.
I'm not very good at singing songs, but here's a try.
According to lifelong pot smoker and rocket scientist Carl Sagan, making apple pies from scratch is extremely difficult.
If you wish to make an apple pie from scratch, you must first invent the universe.
Radical Russ and the Rolla J Studios crew will be right back after these messages.
A morning filled with 400 billion suns. The rising of the Milky Way. Cosmos is full beyond measure.
Everyone knows music and marijuana go together, so let's wind up our 20 after break with the Russ Belville Show's Daily Toker Tunes, the best in pod-safe 420 music from around the web. Today is Electric Tuesday, featuring the latest in electronic dance music and other cutting-edge genres. You can get downloads and more information about all our Daily Toker Tunes by visiting music.radicalruss.com. Now, sit back and enjoy your Daily Toker Tune.
All right, it's Electric Tuesday, and we're going to have some interesting Electric Tuesdays this month. This one, I'm going to start with another Melody Sheep auto-tune remix, and I know some of you don't like the Melody Sheep auto-tune remixes, but I have to have something on Tuesdays. If you've got other electronic music you'd like to hear, or dance music you'd like to hear, even pop music you'd like to hear for Electric Tuesday, feel free to send it to me. Russ@radicalruss.com is the email address. But since this is the holiday season, next Tuesday and the following Tuesday, we're going to have 4 Tuesdays in a row. And, of course, Christmas is on a Tuesday, although I won't be doing a show on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, so forget about that. But next Tuesday is the 13th, the 11th, excuse me, and the Tuesday after that's the 18th. So the next 2 Tuesdays are going to be holiday-themed Electric Tuesdays. And so we'll have some holiday-ish music for you. But for today, we're going to go the auto-tune route with a speech that we've got a different version of this. We've actually got this speech where it's just him speaking, and it's got the Parliament Funkadelic maggot brain solo, guitar solo behind it. It's called Let Us All Unite. And this is the speech from the movie The Great Dictator, the anti-fascism speech that many of us heard before. But this is Melody Sheep's take on it, kind of remixed and auto-tuned. So let's check it out.
I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. In this world there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate. We think too much and feel too little. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness. Without these qualities, life will be violent, and all will be lost. All will be lost. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die. Dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people, will return to the people. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, to do away with greed. Now let us fight to free the world, to fulfill that promise. Let us all unite. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are men. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful. Let us use that power to make this life a wonderful adventure. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, to do away with greed. Now let us fight to free the world, to fulfill that promise. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, to do away with greed. A world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people, will return to the people. Let us all unite!
Actually, I haven't had a chance to talk to Mr. Armstrong before the show, but we had a great discussion about it. I just asked one of the folks in the show, Bob Back, I said, well, what is Louis Armstrong going to do? Of course, he says, oh, he's going way up. Way up. Is that the highest you could get?
Well, I don't know.
Well, why don't you let me say thank you? I'm only sorry you weren't going to be here with us longer. I wish you could have gotten higher, but why don't you go over and say hello to the folks?
Well, I'll get higher next time.
Ain't no rap about that old empty rap about. Now the never go my way. And I never go my way. Now they don't know my way.
Look, when I was a kid, I inhaled frequently. That was the point.
Remember, Mr. President, you once were just one bust away from being Barry the drug criminal.
Life ain't a box of chocolates gone. That's why people smoke weed and take bumps and drink way too damn much and get drunk and do it all over again first of the month.
And now I'm hanging with the viper. You want answers? I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended the Shaolin Temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant. The latest issue of High Times magazine is available for subscribing. The February 2013 issue coming out, and if you turn to page 19 in the High Witness News, you'll find my latest article, Beware of the Border. And there you go, Beware of the Border. Nice little picture that they included there with the border. And I just wanted to talk a little bit and give you a special free preview reading of the article, since you're all live fans. So here it is. The Border Patrol, America's Drug Cops. How the Border Patrol can detain 2/3 of Americans without cause. What do hardcore metal growler Chris Barnes of the band 6 Feet Under, original gangsta rapper Snoop Dogg, and living country legend Willie Nelson all have in common, besides being professional musicians? They've all been busted for weed on Interstate 10 at Sierra Blanca, Texas, and they've all had to sit in jail over it. Sierra Blanca is in Hudspeth County, Texas, whose population would fit inside Radio City Music Hall. Before becoming famous for busting musicians in their tour buses, it had been known in the 1990s as America's largest sewage dump. So how does Sierra Blanca, a town of about 500, become known as the place that nabbed rappers Paul Wall and Baby Bash, actor Armie Hammer, and hacker GeoHot for pot? By being home to one of the United States' 32 permanent Border Patrol traffic checkpoints near the southern border with Mexico. Show me your papers, please. The Border Patrol, you might think, would be something you'd encounter when you were, wait for it, crossing the border. Yet the Border Patrol has the legal authority to detain you, a U.S. citizen, for questioning at any one of their 71 permanent and roving traffic checkpoints within 100 miles of the U.S. border, just for driving up to the checkpoint. As the General Accounting Office states, quote, Border Patrol agents at checkpoints have legal authority that agents do not have when patrolling areas away from the border. The United States Supreme Court ruled that Border Patrol agents may stop a vehicle at fixed checkpoints for brief questioning of its occupants, even if there was no reason to believe that the particular vehicle contains illegal aliens. The court further held that Border Patrol agents have wide discretion to refer motorists selectively to a secondary inspection area for additional brief questioning. The constitutional threshold for searching a vehicle is the same, however, and must be supported by either consent or probable cause. End quote. The putative reason for stopping you is to make sure you're a legal citizen, of course, but the real reason is to stop you long enough for the drug dog to smell your weed and give the cops the probable cause to search you. The practice is so common that El Paso defense lawyers have specific Sierra Blanca checkpoint marijuana bust pages on their websites. And this constitution-free zone applies to 2/3 of the U.S. Okay, you're thinking, that sucks, but I never wanted to go to West Texas anyway. But this constitution-free zone, where the federal cops don't have to abide by the Fourth Amendment, doesn't apply only to the Mexican border. That 100-mile zone applies to all U.S. borders. That would include the Canadian border, of course, as well as our coastlines, our borders with water, of the Pacific, Atlantic, the Great Lakes, and the Gulf of Mexico. The ACLU found that 2/3 of the U.S. population lives within this 100-mile swath of sweeping federal power to detain American citizens. According to the ACLU, 9 of the top 10 largest metropolitan areas fall within this 100-mile zone. The only exception is number 9, Dallas-Fort Worth. Some states are considered to lie completely within this zone. Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Hawaii, Maine, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, and Vermont. At any time in those places, Border Patrol could set up a checkpoint to randomly and without cause detain American citizens for interrogation and search, as was the case with students and professors from the University of Maine last year. Border Patrol had set up the Orwellian-named Temporary Permanent Checkpoint 75 miles away from the Canadian border and quizzed students on their immigration status. Foreign-born students and scholars are now being advised to carry their original visas and other papers to avoid detention and arrest. In Rochester, New York, where the nearest border is 65 miles away at Buffalo, another aspect of the Border Patrol's power is abused: the power to conduct walkthroughs and interrogations of passengers on mass transit. Passengers of Amtrak trains, Greyhound buses, and the airlines at Rochester's small airport have all been accosted by agents from the Rochester Border Patrol office, which has grown from 7 to 27 agents since 2008, despite lacking any foreign port of entry. Carrie M. Jensen, the director for the International Service Office at the University of Rochester, who was speaking to the Chronicle of Higher Education, said, quote, "We've had hundreds of students questioned and stopped and inconvenienced, and perhaps a dozen students, scholars, or family members who've been detained or jailed. For international visitors who see people boarding trains, pulling people off, asking for documents, it feels a lot like East Germany did when I visited in 1980. End quote. The Customs and Border Protection states that their 2009 seizures of marijuana totaled over 4.3 million pounds, while their capture of undocumented immigrants has fallen to the lowest levels seen since the 1970s. Just over 327,000 illegal immigrants were caught in 2011, a figure that's down 53.5% since 2008. Part of the decline in border crossings is attributable to the takeover of the human trafficking market by the huge drug gangs, which of course only became huge drug gangs because the Border Patrol weed seizures helped keep their pot prices high. So that's the post. You can read that. Premium members of the Russ Belville Show, VIP members, you can log on to RadicalRuss.com, and I've got that article posted in its entirety at RadicalRuss.com. For those of you who want to get it in print form, get the February 2013 issue of High Times Magazine, the Hydro Report issue. Check that out if you want a copy. Also in this edition, you'll want it because right there next to the Pot 40 is our own Big Daddy Fink, Timmy Harris, his winning entry for the High Times Medical Cannabis Cup poster. And you can see the detail. It's pretty nice looking little poster there. Lots of nice line art for the Cannabis Cup. So pick up this issue. Let's sell it out so they can see how popular this all is. And congratulations to Big Daddy Fink there for making that. Now, to continue on this subject of the Border Patrol and the federalization, that's kind of the theme of today's show, because we had that report on the State Department and their use of federal contracts and trying to build their own drug war Air Force. There's another story out there that caught my eye about this as well, from truthout.org, and it also goes along with this Border Patrol rant that I just went on, and this is pretty amazing. This from truthout.org. The U.S. Border Patrol has recently released its new strategic plan, the 2012-2016 Border Patrol Strategic Plan, which the agency says is risk-based. So what is the greatest risk to the border or cross-border threat to the homeland? Measured in numbers, that would be marijuana. Enforcing drug control laws appears to have become the principal focus of the border security buildup. Drug seizures along the U.S.-Mexico border have soared as the drug wars rage south of the border and as the federal government has channeled billions in new federal dollars for drug law enforcement by Border Patrol, U.S. Immigration and Naturalization Service, and the FBI and local police. The most effective Border Patrol checkpoints are not the ones stopping northbound traffic from Mexico, but rather the checkpoints on the east-west highways that catch thousands of unsuspecting citizen drivers. Many may have medical marijuana cards or just a joint or two of marijuana, but marijuana remains a Schedule I controlled substance, along with heroin and methamphetamines under federal law. I must correct truth out there. Methamphetamines are not Schedule I. Methamphetamines are Schedule II. Methamphetamines are considered as dangerous as Schedule I drugs, but they have a medical purpose. So there's your difference. Truthout continues, with the exception of 2 years, 2008 and 2010, every year since 2001, when the current border security buildup began, the Border Patrol has reported record-breaking marijuana seizures. Before the U.S. government declared that it would secure the border with new border security strategies and spending, the Border Patrol in fiscal year 2001 seized roughly 1.1 million pounds of marijuana. Last year, the Border Patrol reported hauling in more than 2.5 million pounds of cannabis, an increase of more than 125% since the post-9/11 commitment to border security. The Border Patrol reported 16,355 seizures along the southwestern border in fiscal year 2011, 15,252 being marijuana seizures. I'll say that again. Out of over 16,000 seizures of drugs, 15,000 were for marijuana. Overall, marijuana accounts for being more than 93% of drug seizures along the U.S.-Mexico border. Last year, the Border Patrol seized a record quantity of marijuana, the 2.5 million pounds we mentioned earlier. That compares with 2 pounds of ecstasy, 385 pounds of heroin, 8,700 pounds of cocaine, and 1,800 pounds of meth. Got that? 2.5 million pounds of marijuana, 8.7 thousand pounds of cocaine is the next biggest seizure that you got in that list. So again, this just illustrates how much money is tied up in this drug war and how much is involved in redirecting our forces that should be being used for real law enforcement. I do want to have a vigorous border patrol. I want to protect our borders. I want to protect us from people that want to do us harm. I want to make sure that our immigration laws are enforced. But when we redirect this money away from those issues and toward catching people on I-10 who might be a medical marijuana patient in California, making their way to Arizona or New Mexico or Texas, it's not a smart use of our federal resources. And I think as taxpayers, on either the left or the right, politically speaking, we should be up in arms about this as a serious, not only a serious waste of our federal resources, but a serious breach of our constitutionally protected rights. There is no way that when we establish Border Patrol, that intent of legislation is to harass citizens, that the intent of that legislation would be to put 2/3 of the U.S. population in a situation where they can be stopped for random cause, for no cause whatsoever, in complete violation of the Fourth Amendment of its intent, to detect whether or not we got illegal aliens on them. Oh, and by the way, we happen to have this drug dog sitting here. I am absolutely certain that's not what the American people want the Border Patrol to be protecting us from. And again, if you want to talk about, protecting us from illegal drugs coming in from other countries, okay, that's where, then you're doing that at the border. Why are we doing that 100 miles away and stopping people that just happen to have a joint, who are obviously not the ones who are ferrying in the major amounts of weed? And let's go back to Sierra Blanca for a moment. Sierra Blanca, Texas, where they're pulling over Willie Nelson's tour bus. Are we really to believe Willie Nelson is in some sort of grand conspiracy with the Sinaloa cartel to ferry thousands of pounds of weed up from Mexico in order to, pay off his IRS debt? I don't know. It makes no sense whatsoever, and we just can't stand for this anymore. And one of the nice things about marijuana becoming legalized in less than 33 hours, just north of us, is that we'll finally start taking a look at some of this apparatus of the drug war that I believe so many people don't even know exists. Outside, here in the choir, a lot of us know these horror stories, but you just take your average person out on the street and, quiz them or speak to them about the drug war, the horror of the drug war, they might think of DEA. They might think of DEA raiding a dispensary or, some cop busting somebody for pot, but they don't think about all of the levels and layers that are involved with this. The levels, the deep entrenched interests in manufacturing, in prison stocks, in pharmaceutical drugs that don't want competition, in fiber makers, paper makers, all sorts of things that don't want competition. It's such a big issue. And that's why you should never never shy away from standing up for this issue and let people dismiss it as, oh, you just want the right to get high. No, when you really learn about this issue, you realize that the right to get high is the least thing that we're fighting for. That's like the cherry on top of the sundae of civil rights, liberty, justice, the whole Sunday. We'll go on and talk about that. Unfortunately, I've been waiting for Greg from the UK to get on the line, and it does not look like he's on the Skype. So we will see if we can reach out to him. In the meantime, we'll take a break, try to get that all set up. And when we come back, with Greg or not, we'll have some news from the UK. What's going on with their crazy skunk reefer madness out there? Stick around. It's the Russ Belville Show. We love each and every one of you. And remember, no live show tomorrow. We will be live at 11:30 p.m. tomorrow night from Seattle Center, where they're going to be having a big smoke-in for the start of legalization. Tune in tomorrow night.
We'll be right back after these messages from our 420 friendly sponsors. Support these advertisers because their ad money goes straight to the Russ Belville Show. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
We were a fairly conservative family in La Cañada, which is close to Pasadena in the Rose Bowl. My father was a federal judge, highly regarded. I was in the Peace Corps in Costa Rica, then I went back for 3 years of law school at USC, and then was a Navy JAG attorney for 4 years. Then I was appointed to the bench. I had the guidance of my father. I'd been a trial attorney for quite a while, and that really felt like the right thing. It became immediately apparent to me when I was a judge, watching what was going on in my own courtroom, that we were churning low-level drug offenders through the system for no good purpose. There are mandatory minimum sentences, and there have been times in which I've known of judges, federal, state, are literally in tears because they know that this sentence is inappropriate. And so they would apologize to people, but as they're sending them to prison for 10 years, they know full well it really shouldn't even be a prison sentence, or maybe 1 or 2 years. But they have to follow the law. We, in the United States of America, contrary to virtually every country that I'm aware of, have focused on jails, focused on prisons. We lead the world in the incarceration of our people, both by sheer numbers as well as per capita. It's extremely expensive, both in financial terms as well as human terms. We have to get smart on crime instead of tough on crime. Probation, mental health facilities, strict accountability, quicker justice. Let's make drug treatment more available for people, and we won't need all of these prisons. We simply can't afford it, and it doesn't work.
Who would you rather your kids talk to about drugs? You? Or some guy? When your kids find out you've been lying to them about marijuana, who will they trust? Let's have a rational discussion about drug reform. Let's tax and regulate marijuana, restrict youth access, and create safer communities.
Activism begins with ACT. The Russ Belville Show features the stories of hardworking grassroots activists working for an end to prohibition in today's activist agenda.
All right, welcome back, everybody. 49 after the hour, and unfortunately was unable to raise Greg out there in the UK. The change in time, I think, may have gotten him. We moved the show 2 hours ahead, so now it's like 11:49 p.m. UK time. So he just may be asleep at this moment. That could be it. But I did want to get to some of the stories that I wanted to talk to Greg about. I'll just give you the news. I was going to get his reaction to it. In one story that we had brought up, it was just a parenthetical piece at the end of the story about how the former British Home Secretary, Jackie Smith, now regrets having lobbied and having passed the further criminalization of cannabis. In the UK, they have 3 classes of drugs. Like we have Schedule 1 through 5. They have Class A, B, and C. And Class A is the most restrictive. Class B is in the middle. And Class C is the least restrictive. And for a long time, cannabis had been in Class B. And then it was very kind of controversial when it happened. I think it was the early 2000s. It got rescheduled downwards to Class C. People recognized that it wasn't as harmful as the other drugs in B, the more dangerous drugs, and it should be put down in Class C. And they had seen, decent results from this as well. With the ascendancy of a new conservative government there in the UK, they pushed for the recriminalization, or the repenalization, I guess, or the upscheduling of cannabis back to Class B. And a lot of this was driven by the UK tabloids and their scare stories that they put out about the deadly skunk. You hear about skunk in the UK all the time. And skunk is supposed to be any cannabis that's 15% THC or higher. Or in other words, any of the cannabis you'll find in a decent California or Colorado dispensary. Pretty much, right? So, the skunk is what we in America call marijuana. So, yeah, big deadly skunk, right? So that's their big scare stories out there. I mean, they'll literally have headlines in the UK that'll say things like, cannabis kills 30,000 a year. Ridiculous stuff that they'll say in the UK. So a lot of this recriminalization was driven and is brought back from Class C up to Class B against the advice of the UK. They have like a policy board that advises the Home Secretary's office. And the professor that was the head of this organization was Professor David Nutt, N-U-T-T, Professor David Nutt. And he got in a lot of trouble because he came out, I can't remember exactly where he said it, but he was quoted, I think he was speaking to Parliament when he was quoted as saying that ecstasy use was less dangerous than horseback riding. And then, the British went, what? Oh my God, you can't say that. But statistically speaking, he's right. Fewer people and a lower rate of people that engage in the use of ecstasy have injuries or death compared to people who engage in horseback riding. There's more accidents and injuries and deaths from horseback riding. So it's not to say that ecstasy's safe. It's just to say that on the scale of things that can kill you, it's not as bad as horseback riding. It's absolutely statistically and scientifically true, but politically not correct at all. And so he lost his job. And the UK tabloids, as they are, they said Professor Nutt sacked. You can't resist a pun headline like that, I guess. So anyway, he lost his job. I mean, and Jackie Smith, his Home Secretary, who's in charge of this, supported this recriminalization, bringing it back to Class B. Well, in a story that we told last week, in a very parenthetical part at the end, it mentioned how Jackie Smith now regrets having supported the upgrade to Class B. And she says, looking back at it, we could have kept it Class C and we could have solved this with more education and public service, work with the National Health Service and so on. So, yeah, it's always these people when they get out of office that come to their senses when it comes to the drug war. So, yeah, we'll talk to Greg about that in a couple weeks when he gets back. A couple of other stories. This is one that just broke today and yesterday, was the story of the royal pregnancy. There is a royal pregnancy with the Duchess of York, Prince William's wife, Kate, okay, has announced that she's pregnant. But another part of this is that she is suffering from hyperemesis gravidarium. Hyperemesis gravidarium, which is a pregnancy-induced vomiting syndrome. Emesis means to vomit. Hyperemesis means vomit a lot. And the gravidarium, I don't know what exactly that means, but it's bad, right? It's so bad that she has to be hospitalized. Now, this is coming from Raw Story. And it's not like morning sickness, right? People say, oh, morning sickness. Well, this is worse than morning sickness. This is like vomiting to the point where you can get a hernia from over vomiting. You can get dehydrated. And, this is a real serious one. About 30% of women who get pregnant have some form of morning sickness, a little bit of, nausea and such, maybe throw up a little, but only about 1 in 200 pregnant women get this severe form of hyperemesis, this, continuous vomiting in need of hospitalization. So she's in the hospital for dehydration and getting treated with intravenous fluids because you can't keep fluids down when you're vomiting all the time. And they said a review published by the College Journal found that in severe cases, morning sickness can profoundly affect a woman's quality of life, causing feelings of depression, difficulties between partners, and concern for the health of the unborn child. Okay? And then at the end, they say there are several safe, effective medical options for dealing with it, including antihistamines, as well as, in relatively small doses, vitamin B6, the society said. So, all ready to jump right into the antihistamines and vitamin B6. If you really want a safe, effective medical option here that's really good for people that are vomiting all the time, how about a little medical cannabis, huh? How about slipping the Duchess a joint here, getting a vaporizer or something? Anything that might help. This is just so frustrating when you know how good this medicine is for what it does. My wife has a form of an emetic syndrome, right? Where every morning, not every morning, but every now and then, we'll just get vomity, just pukey, right? And there's nothing better than a hit to quell that, to take care of that. And so I feel for, as much as a person like me can feel for Prince William, I feel for him in that, you feel kind of helpless when your wife is, sick like that. There's really nothing you can do. And knowing what I know, God, you just really wish that we were in a different kind of reality where she could make use of that treatment. Now, there's one other story out of the UK that this one's a good one. They're calling him tube pervert radio millionaire Stefan Glanzer lusted after female passengers. Okay, now got to translate for the American audience. Tube means subway, okay, the London subway, right? And this guy was the tech investor and former chairman of Last.fm, and he pleaded guilty to one count of sexual assault, which was witnessed by police. Cops saw him do this. 2 similar incidents had also been reported. And what basically he was doing here is he's getting on the subway, and he would find, crowded subway, and he'd find girls that, a woman that he found attractive, and it's called fraternization. It's when you rub against people. Basically, he'd stand up against her bum and rub. Right? And so he got busted doing this. This guy's a multi-millionaire, billionaire kind of dude. Right. And so he's now, here's the thing. Here's where this story comes into our world. 2 similar incidents had also been reported. He said he was a long-term cannabis user and had been on a drugs binge at the time of the assault. The multimillionaire investor in technology startups must now sign the sex offenders registry. The magistrate, Jessica Baldwin, told him his drug use was an aggravating feature rather than a mitigating feature. So yeah, here's this guy trying to blame the skunk. I was smoking the pot. It made me so horny. I couldn't help it. Look at her. She's so pretty. I don't know why the British guy suddenly turned into a redneck from the deep south, but that was good. The accent bank went offline for a second there. Some sort of glitch in the hardware. Hey, so there's your story out of BBC News. I got that from BBC News and also The Standard in the UK. Also, talking to his defending attorney, she said he had smoked drugs for some considerable time, but had never experienced anything like this. Yeah, it's that skunk. It's the new strain. It's the new Pee Wee Herman strain. Pee Wee's Playhouse. Hey, folks, that's all the time we got for today. Having a crazy day. Remember, no live show tomorrow. I'll be on the 4:20 train to legalization. Literally, train leaves Union Station at 4:20. We're going up to Seattle. We are going to be bringing you America's first legal tokes. And dabs. There's going to be a big smoke out at Seattle Center. We'll bring that to you. Also, whatever. And if you can't stay up that late, we will tape it and bring it to you on Thursday's show. For Brian the Red, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
Take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.